Now, here's the thing about anger in long-term relationships. It's almost never just about that anger. It's anger on top of something else that's been sitting there for a while. Usually it's hurt or disappointment, or even a feeling of being invisible that's been building quietly for so long that it finally came out sideways over the dishes. In my experience, both personally and professionally, most women who appear critical or who snipe at their husbands are actually grieving something. They're grieving the connection that they thought they were going to have. That version of the relationship that existed at the beginning, but that slowly stopped existing. That feeling of being a priority that faded so gradually that neither one of them noticed it was happening. That grief doesn't always show up looking like grief. In a lot of women, it shows up looking like irritability, like criticism, or anger that doesn't seem to match the moment that it's attached to. So when she gets sharp with you about something like the dishwasher, she's probably not actually upset with how you load or unload the dishwasher. The dishwasher is just the thing that was there. What she's actually reacting to is older than that, and it's bigger than that, and she might not even fully be conscious of it herself. Now, that doesn't mean that every reaction she has is reasonable, and it definitely does not mean that you have to absorb it without limit. But what it does mean is that responding to the dishwasher when the actual issue is something else is always going to land wrong. That's not what the problem is. So here's where it gets more complicated, because most men in this situation, it's not that they're not doing anything. They're trying. They're backing off when things get tense. They're trying to do more around the house. And they're trying to have more conversations, or maybe fewer conversations, depending on what seemed to make things worse last time. They're adjusting. And none of it is landing. That's genuinely confusing when you're inside of it, because from where you're standing, you're doing a lot. But what's happening is a cycle. In this cycle, it has two different sides to it, two different ways that these parts within the cycle are interacting. On her side, she has a need that's not getting met. It's not that the dishwasher needs to be loaded correctly, really, but it's for connection. It's for the feeling of being actually known by the person that she's with. For something that started to go missing a while back and that hasn't come back. When that need goes unmet long enough, it doesn't always show up as a request. Sometimes it shows up as irritability, as criticism, or as an anger that seems to come out of nowhere, but that's actually been building for a long time. Now, on your side of it, you see the irritability, but you don't see what's underneath it. So you respond to what's visible, which is the anger. And in response to that, you might get defensive, or you might go quiet. You might also try harder in ways that you actually know how to try, which are usually practical ways, things that you can do to fix or produce. But the thing is that none of those responses reach the thing that's actually driving her reaction. So that need, it stays unmet. That irritability continues, and you keep adjusting. That loop, it keeps running. And it's not a character flaw on either one of your sides. It's a pattern that most couples fall into so gradually that they don't even notice it forming until it's been running for years. Now, I want to spend a minute on this because this is the part that trips men up the most. When you're on the receiving end of that anger that feels constant or disproportionate, your first instinct is likely to do one of two things. You try harder to fix it, or you try harder to avoid it. The men who try harder to fix it usually do so through action. More help around the house, more checking in, more planning things together, more of the things that look like effort from the outside. And this is coming from a genuinely good place. But it almost never works, and here's why. What she needs from you is not more activity. It's a different quality of presence. And those are not the same thing. You can be in the same room with someone, doing things for them, and still feel completely out of reach. That's what she's experiencing. And the more action that happens by itself does not close that gap. Now, there are also men who try to avoid the anger by going quiet, by not fighting back. You might wait for things to just calm down and try to stay out of the way. This also comes from a very reasonable place. You're trying not to make things worse. But what she often reads in that quiet is distance or indifference. It's confirmation of the thing that she's afraid of, which is that you're not really there. So fixing the loop and avoiding the loop both miss. Not because you're doing them wrong, but because neither one addresses what is actually happening underneath. What I want to offer here is not a script, and it's not a technique for de-escalating her anger in the moment. It's something a lot smaller and more fundamental than that. The shift is this: stop responding to the first thing and build a pause before anything comes out of your mouth. When she says something sharp, your nervous system registers it and it moves fast. It moves towards defending itself, or it moves towards going quiet and waiting for it to be over. Either way, you're responding to the surface thing in the first second. And that first second is almost never where the useful response lives. This pause is not strategic. You're not trying to craft a better answer. You're just creating enough space between what you heard and what you say next for something other than defense to show up. What comes out of that space is usually closer to the real thing than anything that you would have said immediately. A practical version of this looks like staying in the room differently. She says something about the dishwasher, and you feel that pull to defend yourself or to go quiet. But you don't follow that pull. You stay. Maybe you say nothing for a moment. Maybe you say, okay, and actually mean it as a placeholder instead of a shutdown. Another option would be just to turn towards her instead of away. That's the example. Not a line that fixes it, but the absence of an automatic exit. Now, she might not respond the way that you hope, and that's okay. What you've done is changed what you're responding to. And over time, that shift is what actually starts to change the pattern. Not because you said the right thing once, but because you stopped reflexively responding to the surface and started staying present long enough for the real thing to have somewhere to land. If you're in this, if you know this pattern, I want to say something to you directly. You're not failing. You're in a pattern that most couples don't have a clear enough picture of to interrupt. The irritation that you're seeing is real, and it's also not the full story. There's something underneath it that hasn't been reached yet. The work that I do with men is about getting a clear picture of the pattern that's running in your specific marriage and finding the point where you can begin to interrupt it. Not by becoming someone you're not, and not by beginning to process your every thought out loud, but by understanding where that cycle kicks in and making a different choice at that moment. If this is something that landed for you, the next step is a conversation. Not a sales call, but a real conversation about what's actually happening in your marriage and whether or not this work is a fit. The link to book that call is going to be in the notes below. You can also find it at theintimacyupgrade.com. Talk soon.